Zenless Zone Zero is finally here, and so here's my review / first impressions of Zenless Zone Zero. So if you've been living under a rock, the most hyped gacha game of the year is here. And so how is it? Well, firstly, let's give the short answer. It's pretty good. Hoyoverse has done an amazing job at crafting another gacha game that pairs the action-focused gameplay of something like Punishing Grey Raven or their previous title Honkai Impact 3rd with some of the best looking characters, animations, and world you'll see in a mobile game. So now let's discuss probably the most important part of the game, and that's the gameplay. So Zenless Zone Zero has a big focus on the action hack and slash-esque gameplay, and overall it does a decent job. You have your usual things, you can of course attack, you have a skill, you have an ultimate which looks amazing, but it's the other additions that really separates it from the pack. So we have chain attacks. Now these are attacks that you can do after heavy attacking a stunned enemy. An enemy can be stunned by filling up its dazed gauge, which is under its health, which can be filled up by attacking them and using an element which they are vulnerable to. Now this chain attack has a very nice animation in which the camera sort of pans around and the characters come in, they deal a lot of damage, and it looks very good and it makes the fight more dynamic. Now alongside this, you can of course dodge, you can perfect dodge, perfect assists, perfect parries that again look very cool and stylish, and that's something you'll see throughout the game, especially in its art style / animations, but more on that later. Now while this combat is flashy and it is stylish, it is quite simple, especially at the start of the game where you can just get by mashing the attack button, which is a bit too simple. Perhaps this gets more and more difficult as the game goes by, as more patches come, but right now it is quite simple. Now other than the combat itself, there is of course the TV mode. Now this is something you've probably heard of if you've been keeping up with this game. It's a sort of board game, dungeon crawler like mode which you traverse, fight enemies, get power-ups, get healing, all that kind of stuff. And many people did not enjoy this, especially in the betas. Now me personally, I actually didn't really mind this, in saying that if you weren't a big fan of this, then it is still in the game. And so if you didn't like this in the betas, you're probably not gonna like this in the actual game, and it will probably affect your experience. Now this is not an open world game, however there is a sort of open world area which you can explore and where many of the stores and shops you can use to upgrade your characters, as well as miscellaneous things you can do. It reminds me a bit of Persona with the activities you can do. It even has a time system where certain things are available depending on the time of day. Now in this world you can do things such as grab some coffee, which can restore your stamina resource in the game called battery charge, and eat some noodles, which gives you important buffs to go on your missions with. Pretty nice. Now something you'll notice straight away about this game is its art style and animations. You can tell Hoyoverse has used all that sweet whale money they've got from Star Rail and Genshin Impact, because oh my god, do these animations look amazing. Take a look at these cutscenes. I mean man, do they look amazing compared to some other gacha games and even their previous gacha games. Now something you'll notice is that the art style in this game is also quite different to the previous games, Genshin and Star Rail. I mean if we compare Star Rail here, Genshin here, and then Zenless Zone Zero, you can immediately see that Genshin and Star Rail have a much more anime-esque vibrancy kind of look to them, whereas Zenless Zone Zero is a more sort of rounded 3D urban-esque characters that look much less anime. Now this new approach might not be for everyone, and maybe one reason for this change was probably so they didn't just make a new Honkai Impact 3rd, which has a similar gameplay but a more sort of traditional anime vibrant look to it. But now what's a gacha game review without talking about some of the characters? I mean that's why we play these games, right? Well, the characters are really nice. Here's a quick glance at all of them, and something that should immediately stand out about these characters is the sort of anthropomorphic characters in the game like Ben and Leikeon. This is something we haven't really seen in the Hoyoverse game, I think, and further emphasizes the difference between this and something like Genshin and Star Rail, which is much more grounded in reality, kind of. and could show Hoyoverse that they can be successful doing other things than their usual anime aesthetic. Now in terms of the designs, they're really unique and different, but what really impacts it is their factions that determine their backstory and motives and such. If we take a look at the Victoria housekeeping faction, you'll see that all the characters wear maid and butler uniforms, which is pretty cool. Now their design, voice acting and animations really bring their characters to life, especially in cutscenes with Billy being my favorite, as this guy is really funny and fun to play. Now with these characters you can do the normal stuff like upgrade them with W engines, which are like the weapons of the game you can obtain through the Gacha. More on that very soon. You have drive discs, which are the artifacts in this game, and so overall pretty standard stuff here. If you've played other Hoyoverse games, you'll be very familiar with all of this. Now there is something additional here that's quite unique to Zenless Zone Zero, and that's bamboos. Now these are little things you've probably seen if you've watched any gameplay or trailers, as they are kind of like the mascot of the game and act as a sort of pet system in the game, in which they'll aid your player by attacking the enemy, supporting you. They can even be used in a chain attack, which is pretty nice. Now you can get these little bamboos from the Gacha system, which, speaking of, let's talk about the Gacha in this game. So in this game you have a few banners. You of course have your premium limited banner, which has your featured character. At launch, this is Alan. You have your standard banner, which for your first 50 pulls acts as your sort of beginner banner, in which you'll get a S rank character. You have your W engine banner, which are your weapons in this game, and finally the bamboo banner, which you can summon for these bamboos only using currency you get in game, meaning you won't be able to use real money for them, which is pretty interesting. It means you don't have to worry about missing out on these. So overall, the Gacha, compared to some other Gacha games, it's not the best, but compared to Hoyoverse games, it's your typical Hoyoverse Gacha. But now the last thing I want to talk about in this video is the end game. What do you do when you've gone through all your story and have leveled up characters? Well, there's 3-ish modes. There's Shiyu Defense, Holo Zero, and Rally Commissions. These are all really fun to play. Shiyu Defense is a time-based mode which you have to defeat all the enemies within, well, a certain amount of time. The faster you do so, the more rewards you get. I found this mode to be very fun. However, it is pretty much a straight DPS check that will require a certain amount of investment into your characters in order to complete successfully. The Holo Zero mode is your sort of roguelike mode in which you can collect different characters and buffs along the way in the TV mode. However, this TV mode in this Holo Zero mode is much more simplified compared to some of the story TV modes. Now this is really fun and requires a good knowledge of your characters in order to defeat the enemy. The last sort of in-game mode is Rally Commissions, which are the sort of battle challenges that for the first few of them are just one-time clears, but the Area Purge Commission does reset weekly. So yeah, now I have given this game a lot of praise because it is a really polished and great game, but it does have a few problems. The first is that, again, the difficulty is still quite easy, even in some of these in-game modes. The difficulty for these modes, especially in the Shiyu Defense mode, doesn't really come from the enemies having, moves that are hard to dodge, to parry and all that. Rather, it comes from the timer that forces you to have a good character to defeat them, as well as the fact that you can reliably get by through most of the game by just smashing the attack button, which is concerning. Now this may be because I haven't progressed far enough into the game, or maybe the game will get more difficult as the months go by, but right now it's definitely on the easier side. Hopefully they add a combat mechanic or two to up the difficulty. Now there's also little things like it would be cool to use the characters you get in the sort of open world section, not just the default MC of the story. So overall, Zenless Zone Zero is an extremely polished and well made game with satisfying but simple combat, great characters and a decent end game, and a game that as of right now I'm definitely going to be playing for a bit to come. And so if you enjoyed this little review, then leave a like, comment, subscribe for more Zenless Zone Zero content.